Good evening. We'll try this again. Hold on.
You got to stand out here for you.
Video, video, video. Jesus, Jesus. Easter. Okay. I just want to get us in the mood, right? Because we're at church. So, good evening, church.
Good evening.
Do you hear that? Let's try it one more time. Good evening, church.
Good evening.
Awesome. As Amanda, good Lord. It's been one of those weeks already, and it hasn't even started. I am Pastor Ed, and I'm glad to be here, and we are going to hear a little bit about Beyond Our Walls. And Beyond Our Walls is one of the core values that is really at the essence of what Encounter Church is and what we've really wanted it to be from the beginning and what we believe what God has called us to do here in Commercial Point. So if we could put our core value up here, we're going to do a little talking. We're going to do a little talking together. I come from a liturgical church, and we used to talk together all the time, so I kind of miss it. So we're going to do some reading together. So will you read this with me? This is our Beyond Our Wall core value. We value being people who grow in our love for one another and are passionate about serving the community we live in through demonstrating the transforming love of Jesus to the world around us. We're going to try that one more time. We got to sing it loud. We got to talk it loud so people can hear it. You ready to do it again? Here we go. We value being people who grow in our love for one another and are passionate about serving the community we live in through demonstrating the transforming love of Jesus to the world around us. Get ready because we're going to do that a little bit more tonight. Beyond Our Walls is a very important core value to us, as we wanted to make sure that we weren't just a church that was launching into a community and we were just opening a building so that we could just come hang out on Sunday and then go home and be who we were for the rest of the week. That's not what we are called to do as Christians. We are here for the rally cry. We are here to get us ready so that when we go into the week, we go in to serve. This is the movement that Jesus Christ started when he started his church. We are supposed to be taking this love into the world. How many of you guys love Marvel comic movies like Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3? Anybody? Okay, how many of you have seen Avengers Infinity Wars? Okay. I was recently watching this again for like 900th time because we own it and we just watch it all the time. Do you remember there's a part in the movie when Spider-Man, Iron Man, and I think it's Doctor Strange, and they're on that big circle thing, and they're trying to land this thing on Titan, and they kind of crash land, and they're just all discombobulated, and Spider-Man kind of comes down from the ceiling, and he's like trying to get Star-Lord, he's trying to get Iron Man and Doctor Strange's attention because something's getting ready to roll in, and then all of a sudden it like blows up, and then the Guardians of the Galaxy come on. There's a part right there in that place where Iron Man is kind of stepping on the chest of Drax the Destroyer, and Star-Lord comes up behind Spider-Man and he's got his like gun to his head and he goes, "Where is Gamora?" And then Iron Man says, "I'll do you one better. Who is Gamora?" And then Drax laying down on his back, he goes, "I'll do you one more. Why is Gamora?" And then all of a sudden, Doctor Strange, with his fist back, he goes, hold on. What master do you serve?" And then Star-Lord says, "What do you mean? Am I supposed to say Jesus?" And there's some truth to that in service and mission. You wouldn't think it, but you know what? Hollywood sometimes gets it right. Sometimes they do talk about Jesus, and I think that's just God's sneaky way of letting the world know who he is. So the things that we're going to talk about today are, if we have our next slide, where are the people that we reach? Who are the people that we reach? Why do we go beyond our walls? These are the three things that we're going to talk about when it comes to mission. So the first one is, where are the people that we reach? Let's read that together. "And then he told them, 'Go into the world and preach the good news to everyone. All right, we're going to do this again until you get this. Now we're going to say it together. Here we go. And then he said to them, go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone. That's in Mark 16:15, and we use the New Living Translation. Jesus calls us to go outside our walls as a church and just go. He doesn't specify a country that we're supposed to go do missional work in. He doesn't tell us a specific continent to go to, but he does say go. And we rely on the Holy Spirit to guide us through prayer and counsel of other people. Does anybody know who John Wesley is? A couple people. John Wesley was he was an Anglican priest in England, and when he came to the United States with a couple other folks, they kind of started the Methodist Church. Not maybe the Methodist Church that we know today, but the Methodist Church. And he said this in one of his sermons. I want us to read this together. It's a little old English. We might go a little slower because it's got a couple of these and thous, but let's read this together. I look upon all the world as my parish. Thus far I mean that in whatever part of it I am, I judge it me right, and my bounden duty to declare unto all that are willing to hear the glad tidings of salvation. I look upon all the world as my parish. For years I took to heart the idea that I was called to be missional, but I never really felt to go to Africa or Asia or to any of these other far countries in the world because I always grew up, well, first of all, I didn't grow up in church. Do you remember Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker? Does anybody remember them? Like, that was who I thought church was about. And you know what happened to them, they just kind of fell from grace. But when I grew up, that really wasn't what mission was. It was send money in there, and then people go to the world, and they go to all these places, and they're doing all these things. And so as I got a little bit older and I started getting into church, that's what I thought being missional was about. I thought it was about going to these places. And, you know, maybe even going to Canada. But I didn't want to go to Canada for that matter. At one point, the greatest mission field in our history was outside of the United States. And as of recently, now the Pew Research is saying that the greatest mission field is within our borders of our United States. The Big C, the big church, the Big C, has been sending missionaries at a very high rate for many years to tell the world about Jesus. But I never felt like I was supposed to go to those other countries. Shortly after Katrina hit the south part of our country, I was asked to go to Gulfport, Mississippi. And they called it a missions trip, but I never really felt it was a missional because it was just like, okay, we're just going to go to a bunch of other people that live in our country, and we're just going to help them again, and they'll get back on their feet, and then we'll come home. But I found out when I went there, I want to say it was the winter after Katrina, and it was a big, huge blizzard when we were, that wasn't quite the blizzard, but it was a really bad storm when we were flying in there. We were really nervous about going. And I just remember getting there, and there was about 15 people in our party. And as you start driving along the coast of where Katrina hit these houses, they were just gone. I mean, they were obliterated. There was nothing left. There were little houses that were from the back of the sanctuary, maybe to where Dave is. They were just these little itty-bitty fisherman houses, and they were just wiped out. And people were coming back in, and they were trying to reclaim their land, but there was no title, because these were just passed down from generation to generation to generation. So they really had no other place to go. And so you would drive, and you would see these little FEMA trailers lined up where houses used to be that FEMA put stuff down. And I just remember still not believing that this was missional, that this was just me going and helping another person. I learned it wasn't important where I went, but that I went. It didn't make a difference if I was going to Whitehall or Cincinnati or Illinois or to Missouri or to Mississippi or Louisiana. The important part was that I just obeyed and I went. This last week, Pastor Chris Dyer, who we've all heard about, maybe the last couple of weeks, I think Pastor Mark quoted him a little bit, and he said this I don't have that up here because I got it later. Here's something he said. He said, we need to reach people all over the world. It's true. As a local church, our mission is to share God's love with the dear, the near, the hard, and the far. We send major dollars to the foreign mission field. We support missionaries. We send people on missions trip. However, we are all missionaries. And your most important mission field is the one right in front of you. It's those who are the closest to you. It's your friends and your family. Your family is your most important mission field. This has always been God's plan. He has always wanted a people who would pass their faith from generation to generation to generation. That really blew my mind. Because now, for all these years, Tammy Faye Baker was just telling me to give her money, and they would send missionaries. And then I come to find out, man, if I just get on a plane and go to Mississippi, I can be a missionary. And then Pastor Chris goes along and blows the whole thing and says, I can just be a missionary where I'm at. So the question we should be asking ourselves today are, where are you burdened to go? Have you ever been burdened to go to another country? Have you ever been burdened to go to Encounter Church to see how they serve? Have you been burdened to just go and serve your family and your friends? Have you ever been burdened to just serve a coworker? Where are you burdened to serve? The next question, or the next thing we're going to look at is, who are the people that we reach? Y'all got your voices ready? Because we're going to say this together again. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for He has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, and that the oppressed will be set free. Who are the people that we reach? As Pastor Chris stated, we can start with the people closest to us, our friends and our families. Maybe then we serve our coworkers, our neighbors, people at the store. Really, we can serve anybody where we find ourselves. I had to pray big and deep to see who I was to reach with the gospel. I figured out where I was supposed to go, but who was I supposed to reach? In 2006, I started on this trip to be a pastor. And one of the things you have to do to be a pastor is you got to have this really thick book that you go through, and you got to have some psychological evaluations and all this other stuff, because they want to make sure that you're not this crazy lunatic, which I really think they kind of missed me on that one. But anyway, and one of the things that they taught me was you learn how to serve, you learn who you're supposed to serve by your background. And so let me paint a picture. When I was a kid, I felt very marginalized. And through the years, that kind of kept up with me. And so as I got older, God started to say, you're going to reach people that are marginalized. And so about 8 years, I started one homeless ministry where we would go out onto the land, and we would meet at an old Kroger's, and we would take food and supplies, and we would pray, and we would just love on people. And even then, I never really thought, well, this is missional. But it is beyond the walls of the church. And then a couple of years later, God said, well, you don't have enough to do, so I'm going to give you something else to do. And we started another ministry to the people that were in poverty on the west side of Columbus. And that kept going on and going on and going on. And the thing that I really learned about the most was that God is going to set you on a track, and you really have no way to get out of it. It just is impossible. If God wants you to serve a certain group of people, He's going to find a way for you to serve those people. Amen? That's just the way that it happens. So there are some specific people here that He wants us to be mindful of, and that is to the poor, to the captives, to the blind, to the oppressed. And a lot of people think we don't have these people around us, but we have a lot of these people that are around us. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, they could be your brother or your sister, they could be your sibling, your aunt, your uncle. There's somebody in your life that's going through something tough. They're struggling with their faith. They don't know where to turn. They've got some kind of block in their life that is keeping them from Jesus Christ. Those are the people we're supposed to reach. So the next question is, who will you reach for Christ? Is there somebody in your heart that you know that you need to be talking to and praying for? Is there a next door neighbor that you know is really struggling and they need somebody just to come alongside of them and serve them? Because really that can be missional too. It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. It's just being present with someone. All right, the next slide. Why do we go beyond our walls? I made it really easy on you. This of you read is really short. Acts 10:42. And he ordered us. Let's say that again. And he ordered us. The second one is Matthew 28:19. Say it with me. Therefore, go and make disciples. Isn't it nice when Jesus gives us these really simple ways to just learn things? It doesn't have to be this super complicated thing. It's just like, oh, and he ordered us. Therefore, go and make disciples. I love those sounds back there. You hear the kids? That's awesome. Have you ever asked a child to do something? I have 3 boys. They're 8, 10, and 12. Yes, 8, 10, and 12. Every time I ask them to do something, could you pick your shoes up? Will you pick up your coat? Will you take your dirty dish? What's the first thing that comes out of their mouth?
Why?
Say it like you're a kid.
Why?
Why? At least that's what my kids sound like. Would you pick up your shoes? Why? Can you take out the trash? Why? Because it's dirty, nasty trash. That's why. Have you been on the other side of that when somebody asks you to do something? You ever just go, why? I still do that today. My wife went, why? Ed, can you? No, I don't. I don't do that. Why? Because I told you so, that's why. That is always the thing that we always say to our kids right off the bat. At least I think so, is that because I told you so. And I think that's what Christ is saying here. When you hear that little voice in the back of your head and he says, I want you to go and get a $25 gift card for your neighbor because you know they haven't eaten in a while and they're hungry. And you say, why? He just says, go and do it, right? He doesn't really. He just says, go and do it. Christ commands us to go beyond our walls. It's not a request with an option like, therefore, if it doesn't take too much time, or therefore, if it fits into your schedule, you can, or therefore, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, make disciples. It's just go. It is a commandment because salvation is at stake. People's eternities are in the balance. For the follower of Christ, there is no excuse not to be a disciple maker and to go. We are commanded to disciple the next person. Finally, we go because we are answering the question on our life of which master do you serve? And the answer is, you mean Jesus? Absolutely, I mean Jesus. That's the part after the why. Why do I have to do this? And Jesus says, because you are mine, and I came to serve you. You're going to turn around and you're going to serve the next person. I died so that you can live. So you're going to live because I died. And you're going to go and serve. You're going to get outside your walls. It's not going to be comfortable. If it's a homeless person, you may not like the way they smell, but they're still a child of God. Your coworker might be really whiny. Why? You're going to love them anyway. That's what the call of Beyond Our Walls comes down to. It seems like we fight a lot of those things in our lives because it does make us uncomfortable. It takes away from our time. It takes away from our money. It may take away from our family. But think about all the stuff it took away from Christ. I think that's the hard part to really get around our head. The end game of all of this is that we do it because Christ served us first. So what's the end goal of all of this? What's the end goal of getting beyond our walls? It's to make disciples. Making disciples is the end goal. Feeding people is great. Handing out clothes is fine. Digging a well in another country is awesome. Helping someone across the street is okay in my book. But if we don't do this with discipleship in mind, then it's just charity. Or maybe it's a pat on our back. If we don't go the way that Christ has us go, and we don't go with the intentionality to make a disciple, then really all we're doing is just FaceTime. It's a selfie, really. It's about me, because it's about what I can do to put on my Facebook or on my Twitter feed or on my Instagram when I go hang out with a homeless person and I take a picture and I stop and go hashtag help a homeless man. That's not about Jesus. It's about me. But when we think about it as being a disciple maker, then it changes the whole formula for why we're supposed to go. We need to make disciples of Jesus Christ while we're feeding people, while we're handing out clothes, while we're digging in a well, or helping somebody across the street. We do that with discipleship in mind. One thing that I've always struggled with is the idea of what is a disciple and how do you make them? I don't know why that's always been a struggle for me, but it always has, because when you grow up with church as your TV, disciple has always been about worshiping the person on the stage or the pulpit or whatever, right? That like, I'm the disciple of the pastor or whatever. And it always just seemed very fake to me. But my dad was a sheet metal journeyman, and if you don't know what a sheet metal journeyman is, it's somebody who can make a piece of ductwork, or it can be somebody who can weld, or just whatever needs to be manipulated by metal. And by this I mean that like every time when something broke in our house, my dad fixed it with stainless steel. So like if I remember once in our bathroom at our house, there's like, here's the toilet area and there's a wall, and then there's like a bathtub over here, and the water turning on thingy broke, and so like he cut a hole in the wall and we fixed it, and he made this really nice polished stainless steel trap door and put it right there. Everything in our house was made with stainless steel because that's what my dad was really good at. And as you think about the idea of what an apprentice is, you can really think about what a disciple is. Apprentice is somebody that really doesn't know what they're getting ready to get into because they've never done it before, but they're kind of coming under the wing of a master craftsman, and they're learning day by day, little by little, to become a sheet metal journeyman or a master carpenter or whatever trade you want to think of being an electrician or a plumber. Put that into the same context of church, and that's what making a disciple is. You're taking somebody who really doesn't know who Jesus Christ is, and you're kind of taking them under your wing, and you're teaching them, what does it mean to really know who Jesus is? What does it mean to be like Jesus? What does it mean to act like Jesus? It's not about acting like the journeyman, it's really about acting like Jesus. And as a disciple, you don't start out knowing everything. And I think that's what gets really frustrating for people sometimes, is that when they hear this word disciple, and they hear this thing about becoming a disciple, they really like, you ever struggle with the idea like, okay, now I'm a Christian and I should know everything, and I'm on fire, right? Everybody's on fire in the beginning. But we just have to remember that Jesus is going to take us to the next level of discipleship when it's time. He's going to give us the knowledge as we can understand it and as we go. When my dad started as a sheet metal worker, he was bending sheet metal. When he retired, he made the roof and the crosses on top of the Greek Orthodox Church. He did them all by myself. He did them all by hand. And he did them from drawings from way, way, way back in the day. He didn't start out as a master craftsman, but he did get there. with somebody that was willing to help him to be a disciple. Are you making disciples? Is there somebody in your life that you know is struggling that you could come alongside of them and help them to be a little bit more like Jesus? Are you being discipled? Because we're all supposed to be disciples. Are you being discipled? I don't know everything. There's got to be somebody that's a little bit smarter than me that's willing to help me get to the next level to be more like Jesus. Are you ready to go beyond your walls of comfort, the walls of knowledge? Are you willing to go beyond your power to go and make disciples of your family, to make disciples of your friends, co-workers, or the world? Are you ready to go to another country if you've been called? Would you go to another state if you were called? Would you go next door to a friend's house if you were called to serve beyond the walls? It's a tough thing. It's scary. It always has been. It always will be. But I think that's the great thing about this. I think that if you get scared about being missional and getting outside of who you are, I think Jesus is kind of telling you it's the right thing. Because if we just do what's easy, we're never going to get anywhere. So I want you to ask those questions. Where? Who? Why? And at the end of the day, if you can answer those questions, you're going to be a little bit better off and you're going to be a little bit closer to Jesus after you answer those questions. Amen. Mark, are you coming forward to close us out or do announcements?
Thank you, Pastor.